Hey, this is Fantasy Fling with DFS Army, and this is your Week 4 Millie Maker review. All right, guys. Over at Fantasy Labs, got the Millie Maker winner pulled up here. This was a crazy lineup. It was naked Mahomes build, and honestly, I'm not sure how anyone really would have got to this build. The only thing that I can really think of is using an optimizer, or you know, any type of tool, and just kind of clicking buttons more so. But this guy did play, I think, 9 lineups. So I don't know. Maybe it was hand built. Maybe he just ran the optimizer, he or she, and then just got him a Mahomes naked build. No stacking rules, anything like that. I did like Mahomes, and I don't think it's necessarily negative EV to play a quarterback like Mahomes naked. We've talked about this in the past. Is oftentimes he spreads the ball out so much when he has these big games. It's one pass to Thornton for a touchdown, like Worthy gets a touchdown, Juju gets a touchdown, and it's yeah, unless you played 150 Mahomes lineups, you wouldn't have been able to hit the nuts because he spread the ball out so much. So there is merit to playing a naked quarterback. But one thing I always say is if you're gonna do a quarterback build and it's going to be naked, have some type of correlation in that lineup. And that lineup did have that, had Genti and Adunze. So it wasn't like there were no stacks in this lineup, but it was a naked Mahomes lineup. But the correlation was the game stack of Genti and Adunze. Love this. Genti actually ended up being somewhat chalky, I think. In more small field stuff, he was 18%, something like that. But this made sense because the Bears' run defense has been so terrible. So this is definitely a play that I think made sense process-wise. Obviously, the Raiders had not been very good run blocking. So, there was definitely reason to fade it. But in this spot, it was kind of just, he's a talented player. This game is a high total. Going against a very poor run D, maybe their run blocking will get right this game, and it certainly did for Genti. 37 points. Woody Marks, now this was low owned. This is kind of just one of those things where you have to watch the games to just see that Woody Marks looked really good and just take a flyer on him. Silly for the Millie kind of play that really worked out here. And I think the cat's out of the bag, and we're going to see a lot of Woody Marks going forward. He got almost 28 DK points. Puka Nacua, we had him as a core play at DFS Army. He was just in too good of a spot. The volume is insane. He had 100 yards before halftime. It was incredible. And he got, continued to smash. He got the tutty late. So, yeah, this is everything you need from Puka. Tons of targets, tons of catches, tons of yards. God, I don't even remember how many yards he finished with. I feel like it was 160 yards. Of course, I have him in my main league, my home league. 15 targets, 13 catches, 170 yards, and a tutty. So when he gets a tutty, he's going to be in the nuts with the type of volume he's getting. Adunze, you didn't need him. In fact, I was tilting so hard yesterday because I was in first place in the Pocket Mini Cup, and I had Genti and Adunze and Branton Strange, and I was just like, okay, Adunze is the guy that I obviously when I was looking at the top 10, everyone had Genti, but I was the only one that had Adunze, so I was like, just keep scoring Adunze, and he did not. So the 16 from him. It was enough for hey 56. It was not enough for me. And obviously could have even scored higher than the 239 had he had someone else besides Adunze in there. Drake London smashed. Finally, it took the good matchup against Washington to get there. They're down in their secondary. Their secondary has just not been very good. So this was a good spot in those Penix stacks, specifically with Drake London and with Bijan finally hit. And then yeah, another just really low play. You know what? The more I looked at this, the more I thought this was just a hand-built lineup, because I don't think you would have got Tongs and Woody Marks and a naked Mahomes like all in the same lineup. This is just a really crazy lineup. I think he probably hand-built eight other of these lineups, and this was the one that you needed. And then Bucky Irving, Philly, going, even in a loss, a losing affair. Bucky Irving I think he had like a 70-yard touchdown catch and run from Baker Mayfield. So that'll certainly do it here. And then Detroit D as a one-off, Bucky as a one-off, Detroit D as a one-off, Tongs as a one-off. Like, really, there was just a one stack. A lot of one-offs, Genty and Drake London, total of 239 points. Still contrarian, 119%. Despite eating that Puka chalk, that Adunze chalk, almost 50% here of actually 60% of the ownership. But really got different in a few spots. Obviously, Woody Marks, Tongs, however you pronounce his name, and then 5% Bucky Irving. No one wanted to play Bucky Irving going against Philly, but all it takes is one play with a guy like that. So yeah, this was a good lineup. Almost 5x across the lineup. Couple spots that got really great value. Genty 6x and Woody Marks 6x the salary. Lions D 5x. So yeah, love this lineup. As far as just being able to hit on all the one-offs. And I think the lesson here, like, if I was to tell someone how to build this lineup, like it's very hard to take a ton of lessons from this lineup, except there were some really good plays here with Puka Nacua, Adunze, Drake London, Genty obviously was in a good spot. Mahomes in a game that projected as high scoring potential shootout affair. So there were a lot of good plays. And then just a couple like leverage leans. Woody Marks, Tongs here, Bucky Irving at low ownership in a game that actually had a pretty high total. And then making sure to get some of that correlation with Genty and Drake London. So that is going to do it for that first one. Let's see this guy's. I thought he had more lineups when I first looked at this. Maybe not. All right, let's see what Utica did. Because this is the fact that this is working. I really want to look at it. We might have to reload this, though. Yeah, he did have 9 lineups now that I see that. All right, let's look at Utica's lineup. Utica, obviously one of the top DFS players in the world. I was listening to him on Friday, and he was on Penix doubles. So anytime you got someone like Utica on certain stacks or a certain game, you definitely want to keep that in mind. We had Penix, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. And look, he almost won the Millie. He certainly won them before. 11th overall. Penix was low owned 2%. Everyone was done with Penix, right? Now, London was chalk, but the stack overall wasn't chalk because of Kyle Pitts and Drake London and Penix. And, honestly, London wasn't that high owned either. 14% is not bad. But yeah, a lot of chalk in this lineup overall. Got different in a couple spots, under 10% with Pitts, Detroit, and Penix there. He had some Stafford. And it looks like, so the first one was +1. Stafford, he had +2. And clearly not setting rules for having 2 quarterbacks or having 2 pass catchers without the quarterback, because we got both Adonai Mitchell and Tyler Warren in this lineup. And yeah, this was just Stafford plus Puka. +1 with Mariota. Now, he did stack Mahomes. Mahomes +2. Daniel Jones +1 with Adonai. Drake May +1. Genty, Las Vegas D. Herbert +2. Penix double. Mariota. And yeah, it looks like it was just Stafford +1. Not seeing any Stafford +2s. All right, let's see what his exposures were. Like to look at the lineups, but also like to get an idea of, who were the top exposures. So he was basically filled way a little under with Puka, way over on Drake London. But yeah, it's kind of like I said, he was very much on, from what I had heard, he was very much on Atlanta stacks. Triple the field on Worthy. I like that. I had a good amount of Worthy as well. Gosh, if he gets a little bit better touchdown variance, Worthy definitely would have had a great day at his price of $5,800. Almost double the field on Olave. Had a good amount of Brian Thomas. That was another guy. Also had McConkey. So, yeah, Brian Thomas and McConkey probably hurt him. Olave did not do enough either. So, not enough there. But, it took that one lineup to obviously get him close to the top. Nothing really stands out. So, and this is something that I like to look at, exposures of like a top DFS player like him. Like, yeah, a few spots where he's going to be, even with the field with like Puka and Drake London, and then just under 30% on a few wide receivers, over 20, between 20 and 30, and then just very flat in a lot of spots. At tight end, almost double the field on Brock Bowers. Nothing too high there. Christian McCaffrey, a lot of Christian McCaffrey. A lot of Genty. Over double the field on Genty. Faded a Marion Hampton, so wasn't the slate to do that, obviously. Had a lot of Jonathan Taylor, so did I. Didn't get there. He had that 50-yard touchdown callback. That was so tilting. Good amount of Pollard. Faded James Cook. So, yeah, it was kind of tough for him at running back. He's made some good calls at wide receiver, but the running back, I think, really killed him from crushing. Obviously, nailed the Genty play, but not enough for Marion Hampton. Got negative leverage there, based on how Marion Hampton did. Same thing, like too much JT, too much Pollard. James Cook had a good day, but like you didn't need him. And a lot of Mahomes. So he did have a good amount of Mahomes. Come to think of it, I want to look back at all of his lineups. Let's see like every Mahomes lineup and see if any of them were unstacked. Okay, so no, and I'm guessing not, because he had 21% Mahomes and he had like 28% Worthy. Yeah. So it looks like every Mahomes lineup had Worthy in it, and I'm not seeing like forced bringbacks here. This one had Kelsey, so it wasn't just Mahomes +1. Let's look at a few more here. A little bit of +2. Yeah, so a combination of Mahomes +1 and +2. So, yeah, good on Yuta. Let's see if we can find any other DFS pros. Need lunch money. Let's see the ones that did well. Let's take a look at Nerdy Tanner. I saw he had like a $300,000 win the other night. So he's been on a heater. Let's see how he attacked the slate. And then we'll do a quick cash game review and get out of here. This was a Stafford Adams. So this was a Stafford double. Penix single. Stafford double. Daniel Jones double. Daniel Jones single. Stafford single. Okay. So he had a good amount of Stafford lineups near here at the top. Obviously, unique builds, but minus 2,000, that's to be expected in the Millie Maker. It's so top heavy. You either finish like top 10 and you're able to make a profit, or top 20 or whatever it is, depending on how many lines you put up there, or you lose money. So let's see his exposures. Now, he had positive leverage on Puka. He had a lot of Olave. Olave would have had a better day if he didn't throw an interception to start the game. But and it was a competitive game, just not enough. Like there's a decent floor, but there's just no ceiling there at this point. So Puka was a high guy, and then he's double the field on Adams. Pretty flat with a lot of these guys. Even on Adonai, under the field on Ibuka, 10% downs. A lot of Olave, faded to Dunze. That probably worked out. That played it anyway. Tucker, you didn't want Tucker. He didn't score enough. So that was kind of bad chalk. Was over on Jacoby Myers, and really Geno just crushed the Raiders offense. It was just a Genty show. Like Genty saved the Raiders offense from a bad day because Geno was just throwing terrible interceptions in that game. He might be done. A lot of Brock Bowers. So yeah, he definitely liked Raiders. He had Trey Tucker, he had Jacoby Myers, he had Brock Bowers, but it's looking like Geno was the culprit here, and I'm guessing he probably had a lot of Geno. How much Geno did he have? %, yeah, a good amount. Pretty flat after Bowers. So Bowers was 26. Doesn't look like anyone was above 20. Had some Juwan Johnson, 14% Tyler Warren, 17% Henry. Then let's go down to running back, and then we'll finish this up. And Marion Hampton faded him as well. So, yeah, Marion Hampton had a great day. But, it's the breakaway touchdowns that certainly were what was a massive day for him. And he seems like that kind of running back. Like he's going to have his, breakaway touchdown games. And then I think a lot of times people are going to be disappointed because he doesn't move very well, like side to side. But like if he has a running lane and he can hit it, like he has this breakaway speed to be gone. So a lot of that's going to depend on blocking up front, I think, with a guy like Marion Hampton. Even with Christian McCaffrey under on James Cook. So, yeah, interesting. A lot of the pros were kind of fading a Marion Hampton, at least a couple of the guys, Utica and Nerdy Tanner, a couple of the pros. In fact, I think they're from the same side. So that certainly makes sense. Derrick Henry fade worked out. Definitely worked out. Saquon as well. Wanted more Bijan for sure. And then, no huge stands at quarterback except 19% Geno. And that kind of just was a terrible day for Geno. Atlanta D, Houston D. Houston D was good. You really wanted Detroit defense, though. 4%. So not the best day for Nerdy Tanner, but, he is super sharp and wins a lot. So that's, he won 300,000 last week. I think he'll be all right. But let's move it along. We are going to do a cash game review. This is a Millie Maker review, but it's also the weekend review. So just wanted to quickly go over that and, my process. Let's do DFS Army. We'll go through the cheat sheet real quick and kind of maybe look at the chalkboard. I don't know if the chalkboard will be up because we got the Monday 2 gamer. But I can kind of look at my cheat sheet and see, maybe where I kind of bombed. And I think, the one mistake that I did make is Caleb as my chalk quarterback, that I played because he was the chalk. I played him in head-to-heads, and it's funny, I lost. Like, I won about almost half my head-to-head, so I lost a little bit of money in head-to-heads, but I lost most of my head-to-heads by like 5 or less points. So I really came down to just a couple things. Like, if I had played Jalen Hurts and, Tommy Tremble, for example, I probably would have got to the cash line because I was very set on Christian McCaffrey, Marion Hampton, and Puka Nacua in my builds. But I think Caleb just kind of crushed me because, he had a good floor, and I wrote about this. He had averaged 23.8 fantasy points per game. But, that's if we look at a larger sample size and not just this season, we look back to last season, he probably wasn't doing enough as far as, like the floor. Like Jalen Hurts has a better floor. Jalen Hurts has over 20 DraftKings points across multiple seasons. And, Jalen Hurts would have got me to the cash line if I played him. I think he scored like 17 points in that game. So, that would have been the difference for me to be able to get to the cash line, that 4 or 5 points that I would have got. In addition, I would have gone down to Tremble, and I would have got more from Tremble. The 2 versus 2 of Tremble and Hurts versus Caleb and Cole Kmet would have been great. Other than that, I don't think this was a terrible lineup. I like to pay down a defense that serves me well most weeks. Christian McCaffrey, 26 points, more than enough to cash. Marion Hampton smashed. Puka Nacua smashed. London smashed. Like, anytime you have 3 guys like this in your cash line, you typically will hit the cash line. It's just the Jacoby Myers and the Caleb Williams that just, I think, wasn't quite enough. The 2 players, we really should, we're trying to get about 20 DK points from our quarterback each week. And that's typically why we play the Allens and the Hurts and the Lamars in our cash lineup. But in this spot, I thought it would be good enough from Caleb, and we would get that 20 point floor, or at least 18, very close to it. Did not get there. And then in that same game, really, we were kind of crushed by Geno Smith on the other side, just 3 interceptions. So Jacoby Myers did not get us there too, but that was mainly because of Geno. But yeah, Puka Nacua had him as a core. Tet, Drake London, Olave. Overall, I think process-wise, these were good plays. Tyler Warren, had I played Warren, obviously would have done very well as well. I believe he scored 18 points, but probably would have actually hit the cash line if I just gone to Warren, but would have had to change some things up there. Definitely would have had to get down to Olave, which actually would have been an upgrade from Jacoby Myers. So, and then, Christian McCaffrey was my top guy. And Marion Hampton, I had in my notes at DFS Army, the Discord, I had said that McCaffrey and Marion Hampton were the guys to play. And I had Cam Scatterbo as 5,500. One thing that I think I also would say, in addition to the Caleb call, the thing that I got wrong on the slate, and, I know I had Jonathan Taylor here on my cash sheet, but it didn't end up getting to him and didn't really recommend him when it all came down to it in the coach's notes. But the guy I did miss on was Genty, just because he was getting good ownership and he was so cheap that I think it would have made sense to actually play Genty, over Scadaboo, just based on just the talent of the player in the game environment. And had I played Genty over Scadaboo, none of this would have mattered because easily would have hit the cash line. So live and learn. Bad week in cash. We'll get back to it next week and be on the winning side. But that's going to wrap it up for this week in review. Thank you for joining me. Stay tuned. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel, as we got a lot of content coming your way starting tomorrow with the first look, the draft battle, and then obviously the rest of the content for the entire week. If you like this kind of content, let me know. Hit that like button. Let me know how you did on the slate, and we'll see you next time.